Today we're going to cover the topic of transaction types. So, a little introduction. We'll see how we can configure the settings, and as well as we have our new feature that has been released in 2025 R3. What are the impacts of the transaction types with additional rules that we can utilize in our FOS, which are financial org structure, in posting and reporting. We'll go through a few scenarios whereby I can show you how the settings can be done, if something is missing or how it's being configured, and what will be the impact. I'll also suggest some best practices, and we will conclude this session with that. So just a reminder that you can simply pause me by talking and by muting yourself and asking a question, or feel free to add it on the chat, and we'll answer the questions accordingly. So let's have a quick introduction for transaction type. So what are transaction types? Basically, a transaction type is a control indicator that determines what kind of business transaction is being posted in your ERP. So this is a little snippet from our FOS, how we set up with our new rules and mapping. Next is who can configure the transaction types in FOS. So in the FOS, the person with the permission with the system administrator role, they'll be able to configure transaction types, manage accounts, debits and credits, which are the new rules that we have brought in, and execute the process in FOS. Why are transaction types are important? So basically, firstly, we need to classify the nature of the movement. So each asset or lease movement, which may have acquisition, adjustment, termination during its life, it must be uniquely identified. So in your ERP, so example in SAP, we have the movement flow. Without them, it's difficult for SAP to distinguish what type of transaction it is. So it will hit both your GL accounts and trigger a downstream logic. So an example here is given as TT. 100 will be equal an acquisition. So the account determination also drives the correct GL posting. So whereby we also have account determination, it is linked to transaction type. So currently we had just the basic ones, and now we've added a few more. So for example, in this case, we are looking at an acquisition for an asset. There'll be a debit to asset, retirement, a credit to asset. So if you're using a wrong transaction type, your entries could post to the wrong accounts, and there'll be misstatement in the financial statements. So this is enabled for your accounting standards for compliance. So initial lease liability recognized, whereby also is a periodic depreciation, lease interest expense. There are different types of the transactions we have during the site life of the lease, which we have as in 3 postings, as well as any lease modification postings that gets generated. So which will split our accounts into P&L and balance sheet reporting. So control reporting analytics is another one. Now, as I said, we have additional rules applied that can be used going forward, which will help you in reporting. So it will be easier for you to see how much of the asset growth came from each acquisition versus transfer, and it'll be coded to those new rules that we have brought in. So as I said, it brings you more granular tracking and classification of postings. So you can now identify transaction per account by posting type and also assign it to a business area. So if there is in the same GL account, if you have a debit or a credit, you can assign a different transaction type to it, which can further be used, leveraged for your reporting in SAP or your ERP. We also have brought in additional transaction types that you can configure in Nakisa now, that you have asset increase, decrease, liability increase and decrease indexations for liability and assets, apart from what was already available. So how to configure transaction types? So when we come on our FOS page, under the company financial setting, the administrator will be able to toggle on true for adding on for a company code if the transaction type is not being utilized. You will come and click on the plus icon, you'll select your company code, assign the transaction type from the drop down menu, and assign true value to it, and you will be able to save it. So if you no longer want to use it, or if it's not been triggered, it will not be there. Or if you have turned it off, then it will be a false here. Then we have where you can add transaction types manually. So you'll be basically coming to the navigation page for financial log structure, system configuration, master data, ERP, and transaction types. So this is the hierarchy it's shown above. It's basically this. You will come up under master data under ERP, and you'll select transaction time if you need to create it manually on the UI. You can assign display ID, active status, and you can give it a name. You'll be able to save it here. Or the other option you have is that you can actually import the transaction type using our import feature. So if you need to add multiple transaction types, you can simply use our Excel in order to create this. And let me go back and give you an example that of what as I have as an example. So this is a file that I have exported from an existing test environment, and you'll be able to see that you are able to create. Basically, you'll be able to come and create multiple transaction types, and you'll be able to, once saved, upload it for each ERP system. So just to come and show you on the UI, what it is can be done for on the UI for adding individually the transaction type and then quickly on the import export. So if I come here, as I said, you will go on the main menu under system configuration, under master data, and we are going to go to ERP master table, data table, and we have on the end transaction type. You'll be able to simply come here and add the information you need to, make it active, and add the name. So this is what I've shown you on the PowerPoint. And the same thing, I can show you what we can do for the import. So you'll basically come to the import export. You will be able to import, and then you can select ERP master data, deselect everything, select a transaction type. You can download a template from here for a sample data. Once that's populated the way I've shown you, you can simply come on the icon here, add it, and you will be able to import it. So that's how you can bring in your so that's how you'll be able to bring in your transaction types if you need to add individually or in bulk. So once you have added the transaction type, then we have to come to the determination, which is under account determination. Now you would like to assign transaction type determination. So I'll be able to show you on the UI as well. So as I mentioned, in the new feature that we released in 2023, which will allow you to assign transaction type in an array based on multiple criteria. So existing one that you already have is posting type. Then we have added a business area, GL account with debit and credit indicators. So this will provide you more granular, again, SAP moments or even Oracle's flow by events, which will ensure that you have a correct transaction type applied automatically for each posting line and reporting purposes. So we can go through an example for REA standard and a payment transaction. So in this scenario, I'll cover, I'll show you on the UI as well as once it's posted within the contract postings, we will see what we can see within the SAP. So give me a second. So in this example, under account determination for this system, I have assigned under the payment, I have assigned under the ISA standard, transaction type is coming 02, which is what we mapped on our master data. And then further down, what we have is a lessee transaction type mapping. So we are now giving the option that you can have for each as a transaction type. We'll further drill down for each GL account, a debit and credit, different transaction type. So instead of picking up Z02 in this example, it will be picking up for the payment for all the three different GL accounts. I have assigned a debit and a credit amount. So if it's a payment, I am paying to my vendor. So I have a credit balance where I've used 100. And in these two, I have a debit balance for clearing my ROU lease liability, as well as my accrued interest clearing account. So we will see what's the impact for this um, on the posting. Give me a second. Wrong direction. Okay, I don't have a sample for that, but we'll go through some scenarios going forward, and you'll be able to see that this was what is impacted. I do have the journal entry, which was posted and exported in CTR report, which I can show you here. So as I said in this example, I have a accounting standard, my payment transaction type, and for my debits and credits, I was able to use what was assigned. So if I go back for 1 second, you will see that we had for accrued interest 105 and ROUS liability 120. So you'll see that we have those two amounts in the accrued interest is 105 and the short-term payable is 120. So if you are a connected system, it will flow through in your postings when you're doing it to SAP. If you're a disconnected system and you're using the CTR report, you will be able to see the different transaction type value. This will be a new column now, which you'll be able to use. So I've already shown you the ERP table, the master data. I can also show you the determination table, which can be configured on the UI. So similar to what I have shown here, it is configured on one by one basis. So I can show you how it can be done, and then I can show you what can do for in terms of doing in bulk. So basically, if you click on the different transaction type determinations, if I have payment here, this is IAS. If I choose GAAP and then payment, so doing exactly the same thing again. Oh, appears to be that. Okay, so we can see that this is not assigned. So you can simply come here and lease account type. You will be able to sign it. For example, I can come to short-term lease liability payable. I'll use RU asset liability clearing, and then I had assigned 120. And you may or may not have a debit or a credit transaction. You can leave it empty. It's based on what's required. So in this case, I will assign it a different number and I'll be able to save it. So you can assign different transaction type for each as a transaction type, each GL account number that will pick up the different transaction type when they're posting. And in order to do the same thing for in bulk, basically you will be coming on the main menu, import export again. So you'll be able to import. And now at this time, I want to do determinations. So select determination. We want to do the transaction type for lessee. In this today's session, I'm only covering lessee. And then we also include lease transaction type determination, which is right here. So you'll be able to, again, download a sample data and then populate the information and you can upload it. So I have an example in Excel that shows you that what we have done. So if I select just IAS and I select payments to keep the flow. So as you can see, I have Z02 and same thing I can then also configure it here. So I will bring my display ID, which ends with payment ATT01. So I have assigned the display ID. Now I'm assigning the different transaction types, codes that you want to assign to each of this GL accounts when they get posted. So same thing, it's just in mass. This is how you'll be able to do it in mass. And once you populate the information, you'll be able to import it right here by clicking the plus icon and clicking on import. So that's how you'll be able to do for all. I would like to also add that you also have a business area, which was not assigned here. Let me go back. And if I come back here, so you have business area as well. So if you have a requirement whereby by each business area assigned, you want different mappings to be getting picked up, you can do so. Any questions as of now? Okay. So which order it picks up? So first, the solution or the settings will check what accounting standard we are posting for, or it's going to first pick up the accounting standard. Second, it will check the transaction type, if it's a payment, if it's a recognition, termination, so different transaction type. Then it'll check your GL account, if it's debit and credit, and as well as will check for business area, if there's a business area assigned to it. So that's the order it flows. Impact on posting and reports, I've already explained. So rules which have been defined under the type, posting type, GL account, debit, credit, and business area and FOS. The system will pick up those particular rules for each company code, and they will be sent on each line item when the postings are generated. So the assigned transaction type will appear in the journal entry. It will flow through your SAP for connected ERPs, and if it's disconnected, you can view them on the consolidated transaction report. If no additional rules have been configured, so going back, if you had only the posting types, which is recognition, termination, different types, payments, so all those were configured even before the current release, the system will continue using them. There's no change in requirement for additional configuration. Though when you do add your additional rules that we have just gone through, it will impact your postings, and it will be for only postings that are made going forward, and it will not impact the already posted transactions in the solution. So let's go through a few scenarios. So if in FOS, if your setting transaction type posting is false, is set as false in the company financial setting, as you can see here, then in the SAP postings, you will see the transaction type will be empty. There'll be no information available for you. Second scenario, transaction type posting set as true and configuration only at the header level. So this is the existing setting that we probably have if you have not done the additional rules. It's basically my accounting standard, the asset transaction type, and I have assigned a transaction type value here. So you can see further down, we have not assigned any debit or credit values here, as well as for the business area. So what you will see is basically the same value that you've configured on the header part of this config tables, and there'll be nothing on the bottom. So you are getting picked up the 220 from what's configured here. So let's go and see what happens when you have lessee transaction types. The next scenario. The next scenario, what we have done is we have for the accounting standard, we have as a transaction type for accrual, we've assigned 500, but then we have further drilled down and said that under that accrual entry for accrued interest, if it's a debit transaction, you use 570. If it's a credit transaction, you use 560 as in values. Same thing for interest, we have assigned these values. So what's going to happen for an accrual entry, we'll see that we have 560 getting picked up from credit right here because you are accruing the interest, and the interest expense is at 580 or not. Let's see. So because it's a debit, it should pick up 900, and that's what I have here. So I have both. This is configured for both the transactions, both the standards, and that's why you see 560 for credit and 900 for debit transaction for interest expense. Any questions as of now? Okay. So in this scenario, it's pretty much what I had shown you before. It's the Z02 I had shown you. I've set up the two entries here for the payment for IS GAAP, and the entries picking up 910 and the values present for all the accounts. So we will see in this one, it's pretty much same as the one previous, that the postings are picking up for each GL account we have assigned a transaction type for debit and credit. Same thing what we've shown before. So this is the entry on the UI. Next scenario, number 5, transaction posting set as true, and the values present for only one GL account. So we have not assigned a transaction type on the header, but we have assigned it for AP clearing only. So we said if it's a debit, we want 920, and if it's a credit, we want 910. So let's go forward and see our entry. So we will see that in this entry, I am only assigning 910 because the transaction type was not assigned here. In the leasing transaction type mapping where we have further drilled it down. And there's no transaction type assigned. So only one has been assigned, which is on the relation of type determination setting here in our posting in SAP, and the same will reflect in our CTR report. So this is an example where we have used a business area. So let's see what we did in our configs. For our GAAP standard, we set for business area 001 for payment use 560, and if there's no business area, use Z02. We did not provide additional rules here. And we see that we are picking up Z02. And the reason why here in SAP is that because when we had set up our activation group, no assigned business area was selected. So that's why it's coming in picking up the Z02. In this scenario, same thing, except now what had happened is that when I had my activation group, I selected a business area, and now you will see that it's picking up 560 because it falls under this criteria. Any questions before I go into best practices? Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. If not, I'm going to go to the next slide. So basically, what are the best practices? Map consistent to ERP. So it's easier when you are connected, but if you're not connected, we have to make sure the mapping is directly coming or is same as what you have in your ERP, if it's SAP or Oracle, ensuring the consistency in naming so the teams can recognize them easily. Um, Use descriptive business and friendly names. So now in 2025 R3 release, we allow custom labels for transaction types. So instead of just saying digits and letters, we can actually use like if you want to add and concatenate the way I've shown you in the example, you can have more descriptive display IDs. So it's easier to understand for the users. Document clear posting logic. So for each transaction type, it triggers for the triggers for the business events, GL accounts, and journal entry type examples can be shared with the teams. So you can share this information within your teams, which will be using these entries and the reporting within SAP. Test to test and scenarios. So basic end-to-end scenarios. Basically, if you are creating these rules now, so we suggest that you run a full life cycle testing. So from the time you create and lease in the solution with the different postings and modifications as well, and you can test them and ensure that they are reflecting correctly in your postings. So that would be your CTR reports, SCP postings, as well as disclosure reporting, so you can validate that. Governance and change control. So maintaining a strict governance rules around adding and changing transaction types. And you can also have, I suggest, a master file and share within the team as a single source of truth. So that concludes the session for today. You can also go on our resources page, which is drnakisa.com, which is available on the help icon within each solution, as well as I suggest, as usual, every time there's a new release, please review the what's new release section for each module that you're using. So if it's FOSS or general ledger or even just the UI, the user guide, that can help you identify what's new and what's need to be configured before you start using the features.